This girl possesses very special eyes. She can clearly see everything within a 1 kilometer radius and can even see through objects. This has greatly benefits for her work. Sarah is a senior employee at the casino, and her job is to find out all the cheaters. The woman had dipped a chip into the bottom of her wine glass, and the two of them were planning to cheat using gestures. This man had actually hidden a card up his sleeve. Whenever Sarah identified a cheating customer, she would inform the security guard via her radio. Suddenly, she noticed a man in a floral shirt stealing a chip from the player next to him. Just as Sarah was about to expose him, a man in a white suit came and sat next to the thief. Sarah realized that these two were actually accomplices, so she quickly called security. Then she walked over and put her arms around the two men to buy some time. At that moment, Sarah discovered that the thief was actually the criminal that the police were searching for, with a reward of 5 million won. She called the security guard to escort the two men to a room. Upon closer inspection, she saw that the beard and hair of the man in the white suit were fake, confirming that he wasn't a good person either. Sarah left the room and locked the two of them inside. Thinking about the reward she was about to receive, Sarah couldn't help but smile to herself. However, what Sarah didn't expect was that the man in the suit she had just arrested inside was actually Son Woo, the president of a leading company. The reason Son Woo had disguised himself as a casino thief was because he wanted to find out where this necklace had come from, because that necklace had been around for 20 years and was a birthday gift from Son Woo's father to his mother. The necklace was called Tears of the Queen. After wearing it, Son Woo's mother was brutally murdered. The killer was still at large, and the whereabouts of the necklace also remained unknown. However, until recently, when the Tears of the Queen resurfaced at an auction, Son Woo disguised himself and snuck into the auction, intending to investigate in secret who was selling the necklace. Unexpectedly, he was discovered by a bodyguard and surrounded. Son Woo tore off the human skin mask on his face and rushed into battle. Though he was the youngest company president, his close combat skills were excellent. With just a few basic moves, Son Woo managed to beat up all the security guards in his way. He then successfully made his way into the secret document storage room. However, he couldn't find any information about the person auctioning off the necklace. Just then, he heard footsteps. Son Woo quickly hid behind a cabinet, but he was discovered by an adorable dog. It was probably because Son Woo was liked by dogs since birth. The puppy kept jumping on him. Out of options, Son Woo had to reveal himself and ask the woman that who was selling the necklace. At that moment, the puppy jumped on him again, and its owner hurried over to hug it. However, she was secretly pulling out a gun. Then she pointed it directly at Son Woo's head, ready to shoot without hesitation. It turned out that Son Woo had already found the gun in the drawer and had removed all the bullets. Watching the cute dog run in front of him and seeing the woman's worried expression, Son Woo felt that he had uncovered the truth. When the woman's subordinates arrived, they found their boss tied to a chair. After Son Woo escaped from the auction house, he couldn't find his car. Seeing that was about to be caught up with, he had to take a pink electric motorbike to escape. So there was one more person in the crowd chasing him. That person was Sarah, because that pink motorbike belonged to her. But Son Woo took advantage of the electric motorbike's speed to temporarily switch lanes and successfully escape. Afterward, he went to find his best friend Jin Mo, who was both a lawyer and an excellent hacker. From the dog's collar, Son Woo managed to trace the seller of the Tears of the Queen. If the thief was being wanted by the police, Son Woo would have to ask about the necklace's origin as quickly as possible. However, the thief said that he needed to escape first, then he would reveal anything. So Son Woo called up Jin Mo to initiate the next part of their plan. Meanwhile, Sarah was standing outside, ready to call the police to make the arrest. Suddenly, she noticed a man behind a pillar, seemingly being attacked. Sarah quickly ran over to help, but found that no one was beating him. However, the man looked as if he had seen a monster. Finally, he kept going into convulsions on the ground. It turns out that all of this was directed and acted out by Jin Mo, with the purpose of giving Son Woo and the thief time to escape. Jin Mo pretended to faint to buy them additional time. When Sarah saw him lying unconscious, she repeatedly slapped his face. Jin Mo finally couldn't bear but regained consciousness. Then he deliberately said a few random words and stood up and ran away, leaving Sarah with a bewildered expression. Only then did she realize that the two men she had caught had already escaped. So Sarah used her strengths to find the two people at the end of the hallway, called the security to chase them immediately. Soon that all exits were blocked. Finally, Son Woo and the thief had no choice but to flee to the rooftop, where was weakly defended. Son Woo subdued the thief with a throw over his shoulder. The pain from the beating was so great that the thief finally confessed, saying that the necklace was stolen from a woman artist's house. At that moment, Sarah also took the security guards with her arrived on there. Son Woo grabbed the thief's jacket and prepared to jump off the building. In a panic, the thief was terrified and quickly removed his jacket. Son Woo saw that the thief was useless, so he jumped down himself. This jump scared Sarah and the bodyguards, but when they rushed to look, they saw that Son Woo had safely landed in a garbage truck. After work, Sarah met up with Na Hee to complain that the 10 million won reward she was hunting for had slipped through her fingers. One of the thieves had escaped, and the security captain had taken credit for catching the other. As Na Hee was comforting Sarah, she suddenly noticed her missing helmet. Even though her beloved scooter had been finally returned, her helmet was gone. Sarah thought back and realized that the man who had ridden off on her scooter seemed to be the same one who had jumped off the building and escaped, and the main garbage truck driver is currently wearing a helmet. So Sarah predicts the thief is in that truck. Sarah wanted to get her 5 million won back, so Sarah didn't say anything and immediately chased after the car. With her sharp eyes and exceptional observational skills, Sarah clearly saw the license plate and climbed to the highest vantage point, where panoramic view of the whole city was in sight. She quickly found out the vehicle, and soon after she spotted Seon Woo, who dressed in black, was breaking into someone's house. She immediately called the police. Sarah's eyes were locked onto Seon Woo and the blood-soaked bed inside the house. Seon Woo had broken into the home of the woman artist from whom the necklace had been stolen. It was evident that a murder had occurred there. Just as Seon Woo realized something was wrong and was about to leave, the police arrived and declared him the prime suspect. Fortunately, Seon Woo had only just arrived at the scene, so there wasn't enough time for him to have committed the crime, and there was no evidence linking him to it. He was released, placed under a restraining order, and told to cooperate with the investigation at any time. After reading the newspapers, Sarah discovered that the man she had been watching was in fact the youngest president, Seon Woo. Now Sarah began to regret her actions, worried that she might have got trouble. The following day, she rushed to find Na-hee to discuss a plan. She wondered whether she should report to the police that she had identified the real suspect to vindicate Seon Woo. However, Na-hee advised her to ignore him. At that moment, Na-hee received a call from the housing authority. The landlord demanded she to move out immediately, promising to compensate her double the agreed compensation amount. After asking again and again, Na-hee knew that the landlord lived on the second floor, so Sarah furiously stormed up to the second floor to confront the landlord. It turned out that the landlord was none other than President Seon Woo. Hearing the aggressive knocking outside, Seon Woo chose to avoid her, leaving his best friend Jin-mo to deal with it alone. As soon as Sarah entered the door, she began speaking non-stop, saying that even the landlord couldn't abuse their privacy rights, and that money wasn't all power. At the very least, Na-hee's efforts couldn't be wasted. At that moment, Seon Woo stepped out, which fueled Sarah's anger, so she threatened Seon Woo by bringing up the incident at the casino because the case of the suspect hadn't been resolved. If his disguise was discovered, it would be even more troublesome. Sarah then revealed what she saw on the night of the murder, a suspicious character dragging a large suitcase. This could be a crucial clue to help Seon Woo evade. Eventually, both sides reached an agreement. Seon Woo agreed not to take back the shop, and Sarah decided to help him find the real killer and prove his innocence. When Seon Woo heard that Sarah could see things clearly from a distance, an idea began to form in his mind. Sarah knew that Seon Woo wouldn't easily believe she could see from far distance like that since she was born. So Sarah resolutely said that she had been able to see through the wall and saw a man dragging a suitcase away. Saw Sarah speak very confidently. Seon Woo followed her with suspicion. He wanted to see what Sarah was trying to do. Unexpectedly, he was led into a dead end. Seon Woo was suddenly impatient and about to drive off. Sarah didn't believe that she had seen wrong. After she carefully observed the area, she spotted a camera several hundred meters away. Thanks to the professionalism of genius hacker Jin-mo, they were able to get the video footage. Sure enough, there was a person with a large suitcase walking in the direction Sarah had described. The man eventually entered the alley and drove off into the city. They zoomed in on the license plate to gather more information about the car. Jin-mo quickly tracked down the suspect's details, which made Seon Woo start to view Sarah in a new light. But after knowing the suspect's information, the two abandoned her and went to investigate. Sarah was not to be outdone. She went to the phone booth to call and report this important clue to the Gwangi police, her close brother. Just as she finished the call, Seon Woo returned. It turned out that on Jin-mo's advice, he realized that having Sarah's assistance could save them a lot of time, so he turned back. Therefore, Seon Woo decided to hire Sarah as a detective assistant. Thus, the trio of detectives was officially formed. Their first step was to find the manager of the murdered woman artist. As expected, the manager immediately recognized the man in the photo, identifying him as someone who had been stalking the woman artist for quite some time. However, the manager knew nothing about the necklace. Then they tracked down the person who had worked with the woman artist the longest. He mentioned that the necklace was most likely a gift from the artist's boyfriend, though he didn't know the boyfriend's exact identity. What he did know was that the couple often frequented a nightclub in Gangnam. With this lead, Sarah and Seon Woo decided to dress unusually and infiltrate the club. Seon Woo personally fastened the expensive necklace around Sarah's neck. They have made a plan, and the next step is to wait for the results. In the nightclub at this time, the girl who made the rich man Taejin unhappy with her words was about to be beaten by him. Despite her pleas, the crowd around them remained indifferent. Their attitude was even like they were watching a performance. At this moment, Sarah, standing on the other side, couldn't stand it anymore. She marched straight over to Taejin and dumped a bucket of ice over his head, then proceeded to scold him relentlessly. Unexpectedly, Taejin found himself intrigued by Sarah's strong personality. She had unknowingly sparked his desire to conquer her. Taejin started to molest Sarah. Sarah tried to leave, but was stopped. She saw what was about to happen to her. At the crucial moment, she squatted down. Taejin was really driven crazy by Sarah. Sarah runned out, but bumped into a man. It was Seon Woo in a fresh new suit. It turned out that Jinmo was watching and saw Sarah in danger, so he informed Son-woo. But there was someone guarding the door, and normal people couldn't enter. It took Son-woo change his clothes before he could rush in and swiftly take Sarah away. As they left, Sarah looked at Seon-woo affectionately, moving closer bit by bit. Seon-woo was nervous and seemed to be looking forward to something, but Sarah asked him what he was thinking. It turned out that Sarah saw someone secretly filming behind her from Seon-woo's eyes. She held him tightly and informed him of her discovery, but after observing for a while, Seon-woo couldn't spot anyone suspicious. Seeing how agitated Sarah was, Seon-woo had no choice but to restrain her. Then he went to tear off the masked man's clothes. Sure enough, there was a hidden camera. The masked man wanted to run away but was tripped by Sarah. After taking off the mask, they realized that this was the manager, and this was very professional equipment. At first glance, he looked like a habitual criminal. After being forced, he confessed that he was instructed by his boss, specifically to secretly film a video of the woman artist without clothes, and use this to force the woman artist to agree to the company's request. And this time, his mission is to film a video to create a scandal of Son-woo with the woman artist to blackmail Son-woo into signing contracts with he. To gather more evidence, Son-woo used the manager's phone to send a message to his boss. He told him that he had been exposed and that Son-woo was looking for other videos. Just as the boss received the message and was about to delete the video, Son-woo appeared. Faced with the three of them, the boss had no chance to escape. In his panic, he tried to swallow the memory card containing the video, but his throat was too small and the memory card got stuck. Son-woo and Jinmo began hitting his throat to make him cough it up, but it didn't work. To prevent him from choking, Sarah performed a skilled first aid maneuver. The boss then spat out the memory card along with a glob of mucus. Sarah picked up the memory card from the ground and handed it to Son-woo, who was left bewildered. On the other side, Kwang-gi found the car, thanks to the clues provided by Sarah, and found the clues along with a gun in the car. They immediately requested a DNA test and arrested the suspect. At the same time, the three of them immediately returned home to review the video. They discovered that the woman artist was wearing a bracelet from the Children's Cancer Protection Organization. Sarah also noticed a Christmas tree keychain on the backpack of the stalker, confirming that he was the person who had been at the artist's house the night of the murder. However, even after zooming in, Son-woo and Jinmo couldn't see that keychain. Sarah couldn't explain it, so she made an excuse that it was getting late and she had to leave. But Son-woo called her back and asked if she had forgotten something. Sarah thought she had forgotten to thank him for rescuing her earlier, but Son-woo reminded her to return the necklace. Sarah shyly took off the necklace. Seeing Son-woo carefully put it away, Sarah thought to herself that the richer people are, the more tight-fisted they seem to be. When she found out that the necklace was worth 1 billion won, Sarah was shocked. She couldn't believe it and instinctively touched her neck. As soon as she got home, Na-hee asked if Sarah had stolen some luxury clothes, because the dress she was wearing cost at least 1 million won, which was equal to half a year of her salary. Na-hee kept asking if Sarah had taken a side job somewhere. Sarah replied that what she did today was the most exciting experience of her life. The next day, after the image had been processed, Son-woo finally saw the Christmas tree keychain. That's when both he and Jinmo realized that what Sarah had said was true, and they also began to believe she might have supervision. To prove Sarah's ability again, Son-woo went up to the rooftop and called her. He told her he wanted to give her a gift, but she had to look to the side of the roof of the conglomerate. When Sarah took off her glasses and saw the words above, Son-woo discovered her secret. To test her further, Son-woo pretended to fall. Sarah thought he had really fallen and screamed. Her reaction made Son-woo sure that she could see his every move. If Sarah were his assistant, then solving this case would be easier. As Son-woo and Jinmo were discussing their next plan, the alarm suddenly went off. Through the surveillance camera, they saw Secretary Hong banging on the door frantically. Just as he was about to use all his strength for a final hit, Son-woo opened the door. After settling down, Son-woo saw on Secretary Hong's hand a bracelet identical to the one of the murdered woman artist. It turned out that this bracelet represented their love for children with cancer. After hearing this, Son-woo rushed to the secret elevator to reach the lawyer's office in the basement. The two spaces were designed to connect with each other. At the same time, Jinmo discovered that the suspect's son was also on the donation list. It turned out that the connection between the suspect and the woman artist was this child. Just as Seon-woo was changing clothes and preparing to go investigate, he heard a chaos sound downstairs. It turned out that Na-hee's shop was having a promotion, which had attracted many of Seon-woo's company employees. If he went downstairs now, the staff would definitely recognize him. Jinmo, with full of confidence, wanted to clear everyone out. He decisively threw away the bread that Na-hee gave him, then knocked down the balloon dummy, welcoming customers. After trying to remedy but still not working, Jinmo had to take on the job of welcoming guests himself. Finally, Sarah had to come to the rescue. The two also established a deep friendship. When they arrived at the hospital, they saw that the police had already arrived to investigate. The officer turned out to be Sarah's close brother-like figure, Kwang-gi, so the two immediately hid in a corner to eavesdrop. The nurse said that the suspect's son had been discharged from the hospital and also knew that the suspect had always been a kind and warm person in the eyes of everyone, but he secretly treated his son very badly. Although they immediately called the police police after discovering it, but because the boy was too young, he could not escape his father. At that moment, Ara received word that a search warrant had been issued, so they headed to the suspect's house immediately. After the police left, Sun-woo and Sarah saw the woman artist in the hospital photo, and the little boy she was holding was the suspect's son. And this woman artist was someone who could be said to take revenge if anyone caused trouble for her. But she let the suspect follow and harass her for a long time, which meant that there must be some secret between them. And the police on the other side found out that the suspect turned out to be a drug addict. He actually used his child's aid money to buy drugs. It must have been because he didn't have money that he targeted the woman artist and heard from the neighbors that he was also a domestic violence scum, so bad that his wife had to leave home. At this time, Kwang-gi noticed that there seemed to be something in the corner of the room. He lifted the blanket and saw a lot of blood. No wonder the wife ran away and never came back. In order to get better information, Sarah was sent to the hospital according to Jinmo's arrangement, but she and Seon-woo were mistaken by the patients in the same room as a newlywed couple. In order to avoid suspicion, Seon-woo readily admitted that they were newlyweds. At this time, the nurse announced Sarah to go for a checkup. Under the supervision of the old lady roommate, Seon-woo gently helped Sarah to go out. At this moment, the cell phone on the hospital bed rang. When Na-hee learned that Sarah went to see a cardiologist, she immediately rushed to the hospital. Seon-woo was using all his time to gather intelligence, but he didn't expect that in the eyes of his roommate, Seon-woo had turned into an unfaithful man. He asked the head nurse if he went to work on June 8th, the day the incident happened. The head nurse was stunned when she heard this question, but she still took out the work schedule and said that she was on night duty that night. Seon-woo said that she had a hard time and turned around to leave. Then he told Jinmo through the headset to go investigate the whereabouts of all the pediatric nurses that night. The head nurse also heard what he said clearly. After checking, Sarah was stopped by her roommate. She said that out of respect for Sarah, who was in the same situation as her as a woman, she should tell her a secret. After that, without saying anything more, she pulled Sarah away. Jinmo was in control of the situation in the car when he suddenly heard the sound of brakes. He saw that Na-hee was very angry. He immediately chased after her and shouted, scaring Na-hee into stopping. Then Jinmo held Na-hee as if he was about to confess love to her. And the old lady roommate thought the toilet was safe, so she seriously talked to Sarah, telling her to strictly discipline her husband. Formerly Han-suk's father in the pediatric room next door had an affair with Nurse Shim. When Sarah thought about the connection between Nurse Shim and that case, she suddenly heard Jinmo's scream through her headset. Na-hee had indeed come to the hospital to look for her. At that moment, Jinmo was still trying to stall for time. Na-hee was so worried that she didn't have time to pay attention to him, because Na-hee knows that Sarah is a person who still works, even if she has a fever of 38 degrees. There was no way she would suddenly go for cardiovascular examination. Seon-woo and Jinmo must have made Sarah like this. After hearing Na-hee's continuous accusations, Jinmo lost his patience and drank the bottle of coffee he had bought for her to stay calm. Na-hee eventually couldn't take it anymore and turned to leave. Unexpectedly, Jinmo fell to the ground. Meanwhile, Seon-woo and Sarah were about to call Jinmo, but found they couldn't reach him. At that moment, Na-hee called Sarah and told her that Jinmo had been taken to the emergency room. When Sarah arrived, Na-hee hadn't even had a chance to ask anything before she was caught off guard. Seon-woo asked Na-hee if she had given Jinmo milk. Na-hee replied that he had drunk it all by himself and wondered how she could know that Jinmo was severely allergic to milk. Na-hee then asked Sarah why she suddenly had heart pain to the extent of needing hospitalization. After confirming that Sarah was fine, Na-hee finally agreed to go home. Initially, Seon-woo wanted to go home and sleep, but he was reminded by the old lady roommate, so he had to close the curtains and fight for a sleeping spot with Sarah. The next day, when the old lady roommate opened the curtains, she witnessed a shocking scene. Seon-woo slept on the bed, but kept complaining that the bed was too hard and that he was in pain. But his sick wife, Sarah, slept on the folding bed. Upon seeing this, the old lady roommate immediately scolded Seon-woo. Seon-woo quickly shook Sarah awake and told her to get up. The old man roommate yelled at him to help his wife rise. At that moment, the old man roommate brought out breakfast with a disgusted expression. This time, Seon-woo was smarter. He learned from others, lifted the dining table, and put the food down there. But the old lady roommate still kept criticizing him. Sarah also wanted to take this opportunity to discipline the man who bullied her all day long, so she pretended that her wrist was numb. Just as she had predicted, the old man roommate told Seon-woo to feed Sarah. With no choice, he had to comply. Unexpectedly, Sarah said she wanted to eat meat. Seon-woo glanced at the opposite side and continued to feed Sarah a piece of beef. After some effort, he finally managed to feed her. Just as he stepped out of the hospital room, he spotted Secretary Hong watching him. Seeing him following closely behind, Seon-woo was so frightened that he turned and ran away. But Secretary Hong wouldn't spare him. Despite his foot pain, he continued to chase after Seon-woo. When Seon-woo saw Sarah, it was as if he had spotted a savior. Seeing Seon-woo ran toward her, Sarah nearly fainted from shock. Seon-woo quickly covered her mouth and pulled her run away. Unfortunately, they managed to trick Secretary Hong and escape. The three of them agreed that Nurse Shim, whom the old lady roommate mentioned, seemed very suspicious. Furthermore, she had not shown up for work on the night of the incident. However, However, Jinmo later discovered that she also worked part-time as a Latin dance instructor and happened to have a class on the night of the incident, making it a strong alibi. As they were unsure of what to do next, Sarah noticed that a nurse had a pen with a keychain resembling the one on the suspect backpack. Upon inquiring, they found out that it belonged to the head nurse. Song-woo asked a nurse if the head nurse had worked on June 8. She claimed that the head nurse maybe left work 2 hours early. It was clear that the head nurse had lied, as she had enough time to get to the crime scene. They then realized they had been looking in the wrong person. The real suspect had to be the head nurse. At that moment, Jinmo also found the suitcase that the suspect had taken that night in the trunk of the head nurse's car. He also uncovered the locations she frequently visited through the car's navigation system. The head nurse had also changed her clothes and was preparing to get off work. Before she did, she made a phone call very carefully. Sarah used her supervision to memorize the phone number. After the head nurse left, the two of them secretly called that number again. After hearing just one sentence, Son-woo's eyes widened and he quickly hung up the phone. At that moment, the head nurse suddenly turned around. However, upon seeing them, she ran away and a chase ensued. Unfortunately, since the two weren't familiar with the paths and there were too many patients around, they lost track of the head nurse. Fortunately, Sarah's supervision came into play. Even though the head nurse had taken off her coat and put on a hat, she couldn't escape Sarah's sight. After reporting her location to Seon-woo, Sarah followed the head nurse into the stockroom. However, as soon as she entered, the head nurse injected her with an anesthetic, causing her to faint on the spot. Seon-woo received the news and hurried over. After finding the fallen earpiece on the ground, he realized that something had happened to Sarah. He carefully approached and saw the stockroom door slowly closing. As he opened the door, he found Sarah lying there. Just as Seon-woo was about to get closer, the head nurse lunged at him with a steel pipe in hand. Seon-woo managed to subdue her easily, but unexpectedly, he was ambushed and hit with a dose of the anesthetic. When Jinmo sitting in the car felt anxious, he saw the head nurse driving away. He immediately became confused, unsure whether to chase after her or rescue the others. When Seon-woo and Sarah regained consciousness, they found their arms and legs tied with IV tubing. The more they struggled, the tighter the restraints became. Eventually, Seon-woo came up with a clever idea. Now they could only use their mouths to solve the problem. Sarah thought they would scream for help, but Seon-woo suggested using their mouths to untie the restraints. With no choices, Sarah agreed, but Seon-woo couldn't handle the ticklish sensation and failed to do. He even blamed Sarah for not being able to do anything. When Jinmo rushed to the location Sarah indicated, he heard a strange sound. Carefully opening the door, he was shocked by the scene before him. Jinmo then said he was sorry for intruding and closed the door, leaving the room. The two inside nearly fainted from frustration. Luckily, Jinmo was just joking. After the three of them got out, they headed straight to the address the head nurse frequented the most. On the way, Jinmo analyzed that the head nurse and the suspect had conspired to kill the woman artist for money. However, Seon-woo disagreed. He insisted that the woman artist was still alive, as he had heard her voice in that phone call. Just then, a white car approached. Seon-woo suddenly jerked the steering wheel, causing the two cars to almost collide. Jinmo asked what Seon-woo was doing, but Seon-woo didn't answer and got out of the car. It turned out that this was the head nurse's car. Seon-woo opened the back door and saw the murdered woman artist sitting inside. It turned out that the woman artist had unexpectedly become pregnant after getting involved with Taejin. She was willing to give up her bright future for the sake of her child. However, to punish her, Taejin had bribed the head nurse to tell her that the baby had died at birth. For this reason, she had volunteered at the hospital whenever she had time over the past 7 years, caring for sick children. One day she encountered Han-suk, and the feeling was so familiar as if they had known each other before. At that moment, the head nurse who had lied to her also appeared. It was then that she realized she had been deceived for 7 years. Seeing the marks left by her foster father on her son's body, the woman artist swore to make him pay. Because Taejin had tricked her, the idol sneaked into his house and took the necklace, Tears of the Queen. She thought she had grasped Taejin's weakness, but within 2 days, the necklace was stolen. At first, she thought Taejin had retrieved it, which was why she didn't report it to the police. However, the woman artist was nearly hit by a falling headlight and received a threat from Taejin to return the necklace. It was then that she realized someone else had stolen it. If Taejin discovered this, her life would be in serious danger. Therefore, with the help of the head nurse, the woman artist stole her foster father's car. She then spilled fake blood in her home and dragged a suitcase to create a false crime scene. The woman artist not only aimed to eliminate Taejin, but also sought revenge against her son's foster father. However, Seon-woo showed up at that house. He recognized that the crime scene had been deliberately staged. He also noticed the traces of trophies placed on the table. The reason Seon-woo was investigating this case was that he wanted to inquire about the origins of the necklace, as it was related to his mother's death 20 years ago. However, the woman artist asked him to let her go first, promising that she would reveal the truth after her son's surgery. She explained that if they delayed any longer, the plane would take off, and if they missed that flight, Han-suk's surgery would be missed as well. Seeing the strong and understanding child, Sarah also felt heartbroken. She pulled Seon-woo and urged him not to ask any more questions. But since the necklace belonging to his mother had resurfaced after 20 years, Seon-woo couldn't give up. At that moment, moment, they heard a car. Seon-woo opened the door, only to find that they had escaped, and Jin-mo had also been injected with anesthetic. While waiting for Jin-mo to wake up, Seon-woo studied the paintings on the wall. When Jin-mo finally regained consciousness, Seon-woo asked him to quickly pinpoint the location of the woman artist's car. It turned out they had secretly installed a tracking device before entering. The three of them then followed the location and headed to the hospital. The child looked very tired, but still bravely insisted that he was fine and was determined to get on the plane. Just as they were about to leave, Seon-woo's group walked in. At that moment, the woman artist was nearly completely broken down, asking him if he had to be so excessive. Seon-woo reminded her that if she did not comply with the agreement, he would find her and her son, no matter where they were. He also made it clear that he was doing this for Han-suk's sake. Seon-woo mentioned that his private helicopter would arrive at the airport within an hour. Han-suk said goodbye to Seon-woo, and as Sarah and Jin-mo pursed their lips and smiled, the woman artist leaned close to Seon-woo's ear to share a clue. The mission had been successfully completed, and Sarah was no longer responsible. Seon-woo asked her to sign a confidentiality agreement. Sarah walked away without looking back. Both Seon-woo and Jin-mo thought she was angry, but in reality she felt uncomfortable because she had misunderstood Seon-woo. She thought he was a pervert, but he was actually just investigating his mother's case. Sarah suddenly remembered the home dress she wore to the bar. They had agreed that after the mission was over, the dress would be hers. However, when she turned back, she saw that the car door was locked. Sarah went to find Jin-mo, but found no one there when she opened the door. So she walked straight in and looked at the wall filled with books, unable to believe her eyes. Unexpectedly, when she accidentally touched a book, the wall suddenly moved. Sarah was captivated by a basement filled with technology. As her eyes landed on some photos on the table, her feet came to a halt. At that moment, Seon-woo was unaware that a woman was in his secret room. After exercising and heading to the living room, he glanced at the dress on the table. Curiosity piqued, Seon-woo decided to try it on, reminiscing about the time Sarah had worn it. Suddenly, a laugh interrupted his actions. Once Sarah was seen by Seon-woo, she had no choice but to step out. Fortunately, Jin-mo arrived just in time, taking off his jacket and handing it to Seon-woo, which helped ease the awkwardness. After regaining his composure, Seon-woo warned Sarah not to reveal this to anyone. Sarah assured him she wouldn't say a word, and after that, she took the dress and left. Jin-mo then told Seon-woo that Sarah now knew all of his secrets, including his body earlier. After turning back the room, Sarah suddenly remembered the day Seon-woo had gifted her a painting. She immediately sent the anonymous photo to the police. They managed to find the location that resembled the one in the painting. After digging a few times, the police uncovered the body of a woman wrapped in cloth. With such clear evidence, the suspect had no way to deny his involvement. Although the case of the woman artist had nothing to do with him, he had still murdered his wife. Meanwhile, Sarah lay awake in bed, unable to sleep. The woman she had seen earlier in Seon-woo's base looked just like someone she had encountered in her childhood. It seemed that she had finally come to harm, but aside from that, Sarah couldn't remember anything more. The next morning, Sarah cheerfully took the money she made from selling the dress, then came to meet Na-hee. However, she unexpectedly ran into Kwang-gi, who was there to take additional statements. Seizing the opportunity, Sarah asked Kwang-gi about her memory loss. It turned out that when she was very young, Sarah had nearly lost her life due to her powers. That caused her memory loss. However, Kwang-gi was reluctant to share more details and repeatedly urged Sarah not to use her powers to avoid danger again. On the other hand, Seon-woo was alone in the base, reflecting on one thing. That was the warning the woman artist had whispered to him, to be careful of Taejin. This reminded him of the last encounter at the nightclub, where Taejin's reaction upon seeing Sarah's necklace. Perhaps the necklace was indeed connected to Taejin. After Jin-mo had just finished accommodating a middle school girl, he headed down to the base, and the two of them began discussing their plans, emphasizing the need to investigate Taejin carefully. Jin-mo suggested that Sarah should follow the suspect. Initially, Seon-woo thought this was too dangerous and disagreed. However, after Jin-mo persuaded him for a while, Seon-woo finally nodded in agreement. That night, Sarah received a call from Seon-woo. He was trying to suppress his feelings to invite her to work on tomorrow. Sarah was overjoyed, but did her best to remain calm. She asked him why he had said he didn't need her before. Seon-woo replied that now she had become necessary, but not to the point that he couldn't do without her. Sarah pressed further, asking if he was sure he really didn't needed her. Seon-woo finally conceded that it had to be her. This time, Sarah was genuinely pleased and smiled brightly. The next day arrived, and both Jin-mo and Seon-woo were at the office, but Sarah was not. While Seon-woo was incredulous that Sarah had dared to hang up on him, Jin-mo checked his screen and saw that Sarah had run away. They quickly went downstairs to ask Na-hee, who informed them that a girl named Soo-ah had called Sarah. Jin-mo suddenly remembered that the girl he had met the day before was also named Soo-ah. The two of them then drove to the orphanage where Soo-ah lived. It was at that moment that Seon-woo learned that Sarah had also come from this place. Soo-ah worked hard to earn money for her siblings at the orphanage. The director mentioned that this morning, Soo-ah had taken her savings book and left. They found strange pills in the trash and saw a photo of Soo-ah with another girl. It seemed the issue was related to that girl. Meanwhile, Sarah spotted Soo-ah in front of the convenience store where she worked. Just as Sarah felt a sense of relief, she saw Soo-ah being taken away by some thugs. She immediately called the police, but no one answered. Just as she was feeling confused, the sound of car brakes rang out. Sun-woo had arrived just in time. He told Sarah to get in the car, and together, they chased after the thug's vehicle. No matter how hard they accelerated, they couldn't catch up. Luckily, Sarah's supervision helped them track the direction of that car. Eventually, they found it parked on elevated land. Sarah opened the door to rush in and rescue Sua, but Sun-woo stopped her. He explained that there were too many people inside, and they wouldn't stand a chance to win. If they rushed in, they would likely end up caught along with Sua. As they were discussing their plan, Sua was taken to an abandoned factory. It turned out that her best friend was in debt due to drug addiction, and the thugs were using her to settle the debt. Sua watched in anguish as her friend lay unconscious. Then she handed over all her money to the gangsters, begged them to release her friend, and let the two of them go. Unexpectedly, these thugs refused and even wanted to keep Sua. They looked at her from top to bottom with lewd eyes, smugly saying that they would introduce Sua to a job that would earn a lot of money. So Sua had chased him away, threatening that her brother was a police. One of the thugs stood up and slapped her across the face, then tied her up. At this moment, there was a sudden knock on the door, urging the people inside to come out and get food. These people asked each other, but no one had ordered anything. But the person outside said the address was right here. The two thugs opened the door and saw Sun-woo wearing a helmet. After signaling to Sarah, he stepped inside. The thugs began to check the contents of the bag Sun-woo had brought, but when they opened it, they were stunned. Before they could react, Sun-woo quickly subdued them. He then activated smoke bombs from the bag to obscure the view of the remaining gangsters. With a few swift moves, he took down the entire gang with ease. Meanwhile, Sarah sneaked in through the back door to rescue Sua. As she reached the bed where the girl lay, one of the thugs lunged at her, taking Sua hostage and pressing a knife to her throat. Sun-woo had no choice but to raise his hands and surrender, unable to help. Inside the warehouse, both Sun-woo and Sarah was tied together. The thugs thought Sua was just an orphan, so even if they captured her, no one would come looking for her. But they didn't expect that it caused so much trouble. Sun-woo warned the thugs to let him go before things escalated further, and he added that if they had any courage, they should make a big deal out of it. What was so impressive about kidnapping a child? The thug got angry and punched Sun-woo in the stomach. Sun-woo laughed angrily. He never thought that one day, a chairman like him would be beaten by thugs. Just as the gangster was about to punch him again, suddenly the alarm sounded. The door slowly opened. Jinmo, wearing a special combat uniform, he raised his submachine gun and stood in the middle of a poster army, causing the gangsters to flee in panic. Before they left, they didn't forget that grabbed the two girls. Jinmo shouted for everyone to stay still, but when he looked up, he found only Sarah and Sun-woo remaining. The thugs escaped outside and realized they had been tricked. When the three people chased them outside, the black car had already left. One thug had taken Jinmo's keys. Sarah was extremely worried when she saw her sister being kidnapped in front of her, so she ran after them. Sun-woo was afraid that something would happen to her, so he chased them all the way. But they accidentally left Jinmo alone. Sarah ran straight up the mountain and used her supervision to search for the black car. But this high-intensity power consumption could only last for 10 seconds, and as a result, her head was now in extreme pain. But Sarah remained persistent and clearly saw the car's license plate. As she was about to faint, Sun-woo ran to hug her to avoid being hit by the car. He carefully held her head. Sarah looked at Sun-woo's face. The moment before she fainted, the scene of that night appeared in her mind unconsciously. When Sarah found Sua and her friend, both had been brutally tortured, and what awaited these gangsters was the punishment of the law. Sarah lay in her guardian's bed at the hospital, unable to sleep. She replayed the images in her mind before passing out, constantly thinking about that scene. Now that Sua had been found, they needed to investigate the origin of Sun-woo's mother's necklace. The night Sun-woo's mother was killed, she had been wearing that necklace, which then mysteriously disappeared. The necklace had resurfaced after 20 years, and by following the clues, they would surely be able to find the murderer from that year. The next day, Sarah dressed formally to work as Taejin's secretary, as arranged by Seon-woo. He was very suspicious because the necklace had been taken from Taejin's safe, and Taejin had consistently sent people to look for the person wearing it. However, the most dangerous place could also be the safest. Furthermore, that day, Taejin was so drunk that he wouldn't be able to see or remember Sarah's face clearly. Therefore, Seon-woo believed that Taejin wouldn't recognize her. When Sarah had just found the perfect spot to attach the camera, Taejin walked in. She introduced herself as the new secretary and asked to leave to get to work. Unexpectedly, Taejin called her back. Just as Sarah worried that she had been exposed, he told her to put away the cleaning rag. She hurriedly picked it up and dashed out. Not only did she complete the mission excellently, but also didn't show any flaws. While Sarah was rejoicing, a phone call came looking for Taejin. She immediately connected the phone inside. While Sarah was thinking that she was born to be a secretary, Taejin rushed out and scolded her continuously. He asked her if she was crazy when she always connected to the inside of the phone whenever she called. As Sarah became flustered from the reprimand, Taejin told her to prepare the materials for the meeting. Seon-woo was watching Sarah work hard that he fell into deep thought. During the meeting, Taejin wore sunglasses to hide the fact that he was dozing off. When the chairman entered, everyone stood up to greet him. Taejin remained sound asleep asleep, oblivious to the situation. Sarah quickly nudged him awake and used colored pens to take notes on the meeting content. After Taejin glanced over her notes, he began to speak seriously, not realizing that everyone saw him as a fool. At that moment, Sarah quickly replaced his documents with another one, causing Taejin to become very angry with her for the lack of proper preparation. Secretary Kim quickly stepped in to save Sarah. Seon-woo reprimanded Taejin for being the meeting's chairperson, but not grasping the content, and for turning his frustration on his subordinate. Taejin felt humiliated in front of everyone and immediately decided to fire Sarah. However, Secretary Kim opposed the decision, prompting Seon-woo to realize that Taejin genuinely listened to him. Curious about the reason, he called Jin-mo to have a tracking device installed in Taejin's car. That evening, Seon-woo followed Taejin to a high-end bar. He bribed the server to place a listening device under a fruit plate. He overheard Taejin demanding to take a photo with friends, and Sarah was in that picture. Although it wasn't very clear, it was enough to arouse Taejin's suspicions. Seon-woo wanted to go home first, but a woman blocked his way. Because she bothered him, he was caught sight of by Taejin. Taejin became extremely suspicious that he was being followed. Seon-woo told him not to overthink it and then sat down seriously, waiting for someone to arrive. Unexpectedly, Taejin also sat down, curious to see how long Seon-woo's lies could last. Seon-woo had no choice but to call Secretary Hong, but he was startled when Hong's voice suddenly came from behind. Both men turned around to see Secretary Hong leading a group of employees out for dinner, waving cheerfully. Seon-woo quickly waved back enthusiastically, pretending he was there for a legitimate reason. Taejin was confused, couldn't believe Seon-woo actually had plans with the secretarial team. The staff was thrilled, never expecting to be invited to dinner by the chairman and director of the company. One of the secretaries even went wild at the sight of Secretary Kim. Once they sat down, Seon-woo texted Sarah, urging her to leave quickly. However, Taejin wouldn't let Sarah go. He pulled her closer and insisted she stay. With no other options, Sarah had to follow the group, downing drink after drink. By the time she was drunk, the secretaries started to spill the beans about their feelings. The next day after work, Taejin was referred to as the madman by the staff. It seems that his usual style really makes people hate him. There was also someone who confessed love to Secretary Kim in a passionate way, but Secretary Kim remained silent with a disgusted look on his face. When Sarah found herself in a difficult situation, Secretary Kim stepped in to rescue her. Although this dinner was challenging for Sarah, luckily it wasn't dangerous. Just when she was worried about how to pay for a taxi, Secretary Kim kindly offered to drive her home. Seon-woo was waiting by the roadside, so jealous that he was speechless. It was only when Sarah refused that he breathed a sigh of relief. However, his pride wouldn't let him call out and invite Sarah to ride with him. Watching Sarah stumble forward, Seon-woo convinced himself that she could manage on her own, so he stepped on the gas and drove off quickly. However, after driving a short distance, he realized Sarah was nowhere to be seen. He anxiously got out of the car and looked for her. He also convinced himself that it was because Sarah was his employee that he was worried. Seeing Sarah sitting at the bus stop without leaving, Seon-woo felt that he had really worried too much. However, at this moment, Sarah felt nauseous. Seon-woo was about to put out his hand to catch it, but Sarah swallowed it back. Seon-woo had no choice but to carry Sarah on his back, but Sarah's hand started to wander around again him. At the same time, Jin-mo was not idle either. He stepped onto the dance floor with unique movements, dancing with Nahi. Meanwhile, on the other side, Seon-woo finally managed to bring Sarah home. He was so exhausted that he could barely lie down. However, Sarah suddenly sat up and cupped his face. She was so drunk that she actually mistook him for Nahi. She even mumbled, saying how strange it was that today, Nahi looked like Seon-woo. Seon-woo was both angry and amused, but he still covered Sarah with a blanket before leaving with peace of mind. Unexpectedly, there was a knock at the door. Sarah instinctively got up to answer it, but Seon-woo caught her, and the two of them ended up falling onto the bed together. The next morning, Jin-mo woke up in an unfamiliar bed and immediately realized he wasn't wearing any clothes. Then he remembered that after dancing at the nightclub the previous night, he had gone drinking with his beautiful neighbor, Nahi. Just then, the sound of a flushing toilet came from the bathroom. Nahi stepped out of the bathroom and saw Jin-mo in a very unseemly state. At that moment, Jin-mo recalled everything from the previous night. After getting drunk, the two of them had slept together. Nahi pretended to be calm, said she had to go back to her shop and left first. But once she stepped outside, she couldn't keep pretending anymore. Nahi regretted it so much. After changing his clothes, Jin-mo tried to sneak out while Nahi wasn't paying attention. But unfortunately, she caught him. He was embarrassed, awkwardly explained that he had just gone for a job. Jin-mo felt the need to explain what had happened the night before. But just then, a man walked in asking for bread. Jin-mo took the opportunity to slip out unnoticed, completely panicked and unsure of what to do. That evening when he returned, Jin-mo saw the man this morning causing trouble with Nahi. The man claimed he had swallowed a steel wire that was in one of Nahi's cakes and demanded compensation. However, the steel wire couldn't possibly have been in the cake, as the bakery didn't use anything like that. But the man insisted it was there and threatened to sue if he wasn't compensated. At that moment, Jin-mo confidently stepped forward, handed over his business card, and introduced himself as Nahi's personal lawyer. He then asked the man where he was injured. Initially, the man shouted that the steel wire had scratched his mouth, but Jin-mo calmly pointed out that spreading false information to intimidate others could result in a fine of no less than 15 million won, or imprisonment for no less than 5 years. Hearing this, the man immediately became terrified. The man said he would try applying some ointment and might not need to come back if it healed. Nahi had always been strong ever before. She suddenly felt a sense of security from Jin Mu. That night, the three of them began their investigation into Taejin, and their mission this time was to find his contact and destroy their partnership. Sarah deliberately approached Taejin, even stepping hard on Son Woo's foot to increase credibility, aiming to win Taejin's trust. She used her super sight ability to figure out the password to his phone, while Taejin found joy in watching Son Woo get tormented by his secretary. Pleased with what he saw, Taejin immediately decided to invite Sarah to lunch. Sarah purposely used her chopsticks to mess up the food, causing oil to splatter on Taejin. She quickly apologized and offered to go to the car to get a spare shirt for him. As soon as she opened the car, she saw someone's foot stepped on it. Sarah hurriedly pulled Seon Woo aside, who then handed her a USB to copy data from Taejin's phone onto it. If not, he would trample her feet as revenge for what happened this morning. Sarah could only mutter curses under her breath about Seon Woo. When she returned, she saw Taejin's phone lying on the table by chance, while he was still in the restroom dealing with his shirt. Sarah naturally seized this opportunity, plugging in the Type-C connector without thinking more. She successfully entered the phone's password, which she had memorized earlier by using her super sight on Taejin's eyes that morning. Seon Woo and Jin Mo had already connected on their end, immediately began the data copy process. As time passed, the tension among the three grew, especially for Sarah. She feared what would happen if Taejin discovered her actions, and her anxiety led her to constantly glance toward the door. Just then, Seon Woo warned her that Taejin was stepping out of the restroom. The moment Taejin opened the door, Sarah quickly placed a box over the phone to buy them a little more time to finish the transfer. Once she heard that the data copying was complete, Sarah casually lifted the box, unplugged the Type-C connector, and returned to her seat without betraying any sign of nervousness. Simultaneously, she quietly sighed in relief. At that moment, Taejin commented that he felt like they had met somewhere before. Sarah calmly responded, saying someone of her status could never have crossed paths with someone like Taejin, and joked that she had a mass face. With that, she successfully deceived Taejin once more. Meanwhile, Jin Mo analyzed the data and discovered a message revealing that Taejin had made an appointment to see someone named Sunday at Chongryong Room. However, the number used on the other end was from overseas, so they couldn't trace it. Taejin glanced at the time and, realizing the appointment was approaching, told Sarah to leave early. At this time, Jin Mo also found out Sunday's identity. He was the most welcomed genius R&D employee in the industry recently, and his name was Chi-son. Regardless of Taejin's plan, they needed to stop this meeting and seize the chance to attack at Taejin. When Sarah returned, the three of them disguised themselves as Chinese patrons and entered the restaurant to carry out their plan. Seon Woo pretended to be Taejun and went in to meet Chi-son, while Sarah posed as a receptionist, escorting the real Chi-son into a fake Chongryong room. In the actual Chongryong room, Taejin sat with Jin Mo, who was disguised as a fake Chi-son. Jin Mo presented a pre-prepared business card, claiming to be from a special surveillance group at H Corporation. Jin Mo lied that Chi-son was found to have secret contact with China and is now under investigation. Meanwhile, Chi-son was looking at Seon Woo with a puzzled expression. He asked where Taejin was. Seon Woo also used the same method, saying that Taejin was being investigated by the company. If he stopped now, Seon Woo would not pursue the matter further. On the other side, Taejin angrily threw away the business card and turned around to leave. Chi-son was afraid of being exposed after hearing this, so she answered vaguely and was about to run away. Seon Woo stopped him and said that from now on, he was not allowed to contact Taejun anymore. Seon Woo also warned Chi-son not to mention this incident to Taejun. Chi-son hastily nodded in agreement, and Seon Woo also promised him that he wouldn't let bad thing happen. Anyway, that if this matter were exposed, it could damage the company's reputation. After successfully completing their mission, the three of them were in high spirits, unaware that Secretary Kim had secretly captured their entire site by photographs. In the next scene, Sarah receives a mission of increasing difficulty, which is to ruin Chairman Seon Woo's blind date. The goal was to drive away a woman who was both wealthy and beautiful. In front of Yumin, they held hands and acted affectionate, making Yumin seating across from them had to be jealous and angry. Sarah even acted cutesy, asking Seon Woo to feed her a piece of cake. After Seon Woo fed Sarah, he ate the remaining piece, which pushed Yumin over the edge. She was furious and abruptly stood up and stormed out. As soon as Yumin left, Seon Woo and Sarah immediately let go of each other's hands. But then Sarah caught sight of Secretary Hong nearby. Quick on his feet, Seon Woo came up with a plan and declared that Sarah was his girlfriend, ensuring that people would stop pressuring him to go on blind dates. He then placed a pair of glasses on Sarah and took her straight to the top floor room. To reward Sarah for her convincing performance, Seon Woo ordered her favorite dish was spicy fried rice cakes. Seon Woo had never eaten such foods before, so he was curious about what made them so delicious that Sarah was devouring them so eagerly. Sarah playfully held up a piece of the rice cake to his mouth. Just as Seon Woo mustered the courage to open his mouth and eat it, Sarah mischievously turned the chopsticks back and ate the piece herself. After the meal, Sarah fell asleep, leaving Seon-woo feeling helpless as he watched this carefree woman. At this point, she nearly rolled off the sofa in her sleep, forcing Seon-woo to pick her up and place her on his large bed. He then resigned himself to sleeping on the sofa with only a pillow to keep him company. The next morning, Seon-woo was startled awake by a phone call. He found that he was no longer on the sofa, but lying in bed. Meanwhile, Sarah groggily reached out for her phone. Suddenly, she felt an arm next to her. When she opened her eyes, she realized she was nestled in Seon-woo's arms. She was so scared that she screamed and quickly jumped out of bed. Only when she saw that she was still dressed and Seon-woo assured her that he didn't do anything did Sarah feel relieved. Sarah quickly checked her phone and saw that she was about to be late for work. However, Seon-woo reassured her to stay calm, telling her not to worry because he would take her to work via a secret passage. After both of them changed into proper attire, they entered a secret underground room. The awkwardness from the previous night lingered between them. Out. The passage led directly to the chairman's office. As soon as Sarah left, Seon-woo turned around and was immediately startled by Secretary Hong, standing right behind him. Secretary Hong asked if Seon-woo had been out with a woman the previous night. Seon-woo didn't deny it and confirmed that the situation was just as Secretary Hong had assumed. Seon-woo then inquired why Secretary Hong had called so early, to which he explained that a strange post had appeared on the chairman's office's network announcement. However, now they couldn't find Manager Kang because he wasn't answering his phone. Seon-woo checked the security cameras and discovered that after Manager Kang entered the company this morning, he had not been seen leaving, indicating that he was still inside the building. Meanwhile, Taejin began to suspect Sarah's identity. He had a feeling that he had seen her somewhere before. After comparing photos, he finally realized that Sarah was the woman who had splashed water on him. Determined to catch Sarah, he rushed to the company, but by the time he reached the turn, Sarah had vanished. Taejin turned around and tried to block a cleaning staff member, unaware that it was actually Seon-woo in disguise. Knowing that Taejin had uncovered Sarah's identity, Seon-woo acted quickly. After entering the restroom, Seon-woo brought Sarah out, and she complained that hiding in the storage container had an unusual smell that made she hard to breathe. Seon-woo remarked that while it smelled heavenly when eating, it was like hell when inhaled. Looking down, Sarah spotted a truck filled with durians. Seon-woo quickly retrieved a set of cleaning staff uniforms and told Sarah to put one on. Next, they needed to find the missing Manager Kang. After changing their clothes, the two pushed the cart outside, but they were called by the cleaning team leader, who asked where they were coming from. Luckily, Sarah quickly thought on her feet and claimed they were there to fill in for Mr. Jung, and Seon-woo was the new guy. However, the team leader stopped them from taking the elevator and informed them that other employees didn't like cleaning staff using the elevator because it was unpleasant and smelled bad. Seon-woo had to carry the garbage cart up the stairs while cursing the superior in the company. Ironically, that superior was himself, as he had been so busy playing detective that he neglected the company's activities. Eventually, they made it to the 12th floor. Using their identities as cleaning staff, they discreetly searched for clues at Manager Kang's desk. Seon-woo discovered a project that Manager Kang had printed a few days earlier, but it had been written by an employee named Ji Hyun, and the original document didn't bear his signature. Seon-woo took out his phone and snapped a photo as evidence. He then pretended to empty the trash while plugging a USB drive into the computer for Jinmo to copy the data. Meanwhile, Sarah noticed a female employee named Lee Yun holding a flyer about sleep therapy. Seon-woo also found Manager Kang's broken fountain pen in the trash. Just as he was about to piece things together, Sarah reminded him that Taejun's secretary was nearby. Fearing they would be recognized, the two quickly turned around and pushed the cart to run out. They went to the meeting room to share the information they had gathered. Sarah used her super sight and discovered a strange powder on the coffee cup, suggesting that someone had likely slipped a sedative into it and kidnapped Manager Kang. Seon-woo immediately grew anxious and asked Sarah if she had just used her superpower again. He kept inquiring whether she felt uncomfortable. Sarah quickly changed the subject, mentioning that she noticed Lee Yun was sleeping poorly and wondered if the powder could be a sleeping drug. At that moment, Jinmo also made a discovery. Most of the documents on the computer had been written by Ji Hyun, but when submitted, Manager Kang had changed them to his own name. It seemed that Ji Hyun had devoted herself to the company, so why was Manager Kang's broken pen found in Lee Yun's trash? Sarah suspected that the two women were colluding to commit a crime. Seon-woo cautioned that they couldn't jump to conclusions yet and needed to confirm a few more details. While the three were joking around happily, the cleaning team leader approached them. Sarah signaled Seon-woo to get back to work quickly. Seon-woo was not paying attention, so he just stood there. After seeing the cleaning team leader, he panicked and pretended to be busy, but the team leader just gently told them to go clean the Nam toilet. Seon-woo was stunned, and Sarah happily agreed. Unable to endure any longer, Seon-woo turned to leave, but Sarah pulled him back. Just then, a calm-looking man stepped out. Seon-woo nearly crumbled when he opened the door that left an indelible haunting fear within him. Ever since Sarah had hidden in the trash can, Taejin had been still relentlessly searching for her. Suddenly, one scene caught his suspicion. When he zoomed in, it was indeed Sarah dressed as a janitor. At that moment, Sarah was overhearing some female employees chatting in the break room. It turned out that Manager Kang often caused trouble for the female staff and would humiliate others with that pen. Finally, Sarah understood understood Li Yun's motive. Just as she was about to report her latest findings to Seon-woo, Taejin approached and tried to catch her. Sarah ran away, but Taejin chased after her and wouldn't let her go. Seon-woo told her to run quickly into the women's restroom, but unexpectedly Taejin was like a pervert, daring to barge into the women's restroom. Sarah was about to close the door when he blocked her. Luckily, Seon-woo arrived just in time. With one punch, he knocked Taejin unconscious. Sarah worriedly asked if hitting Taejin like that would cost him his life, but Seon-woo said it was gentle touch. After that, the two locked Taejin in the restroom. However, as they stepped outside, they ran into Seon-woo's personal secretary. Secretary Hong showed a wronged expression, saying that every day he let the chairman's hand have no dust, so why the chairman now had to cleaning it. Seon-woo quickly changed the subject and asked Secretary Hong if there had been any recent complaints against Manager Kang. Hong replied no, but mentioned that 2 months prior, Manager Kang had requested an investigation into Department Head Ha Jin. Now the department head had resigned. Just as Secretary Hong was still fretting over Seon-woo's body odor, Seon-woo quickly assigned him a task to take care of this garbage car. After that, Seon-woo left with Sarah as if nothing had happened. Meanwhile, Taejin finally escaped from the women's restroom, but he was brought bad news by Secretary Kim. President Seon-woo actually found Manager Kang, who accused Taejin. It turned out that Seon-woo and Sarah had investigated the entire disappearance process in the secret room. The department head Ha Jin, who had resigned 2 months ago, had spiked the coffee of everyone with sleeping pills. Then she put Manager Kang into a box and transported him to this location. Manager Kang was likely still sound asleep in the box, and it was also thanks to the story of the cleaning team leader that Seon-woo discovered everything. Last night, when Manager Jung was helping move the screen, then he got injured. Department head Ha Jin took the opportunity to push the cleaning cart over. After that, she hid inside the storage container, looking for an opportunity to secretly post articles reporting internal news. The TV had also been moved there by Department head Ha Jin. She later confessed to all of her actions, claiming sole responsibility and stating no one else was involved. She had been forced to resign due to false accusations from Manager Kang, so she felt hatred for him. After accidentally overhearing a phone call between Manager Kang and Taejin, Department head Ha Jin learned that Manager Kang held information about Taejin's corruption. This prompted her to eliminate both of them, using Manager Kang's identity to post an internal accusation. This move would not only create a rift between them, but also potentially punish the two wrongdoers. Then at 1 a.m., Department head Ha Jin posted the article that to help Ji-hyun and Lee Jeon avoid suspicion. As the former department head, she had witnessed Manager Kang take all the credit for Ji-hyun's work. Moreover, he frequently insulted and harassed Lee Jeon. However, she lacked the courage to stand up for them, which left her feeling guilty. Seon-woo summoned the two victims, Ji-hyun and Lee Jeon, and solemnly apologized to the three of them, then promising to seek justice for them. Subsequently, Ha Jin led everyone to find Manager Kang, who was still in the cardboard box. After stretching comfortably, he saw Seon-woo standing in front of him. He intended to quickly stand up to greet Seon-woo, but hit his head on the wooden board. Seon-woo directly asked him to provide evidence of Taejin's corruption. Taejin then found Sarah and intended to question her. Luckily, Seon-woo arrived in time. He had to call Taejin away so that Sarah could escape the disaster. Seon-woo admitted that Sarah was his person, and he asked Taejin how he came to have the necklace. However, Taejin was confused and claimed he didn't know from when he had it. At that moment, Seon-woo realized that the owner of the necklace was not Taejin, but his father, which meant it belonged to the vice chairman. This time, Manager Kang had been taken away by the police, and Secretary Kim returned to inform Taejin's father that his son's corrupt activities had been discovered by Seon-woo. Taejin's father was furious upon hearing this and demanded Secretary Kim call Taejin immediately. The vice chairman knew that Seon-woo was investigating the necklace, so they hired a gang to kidnap Seon-woo, offering a very high price of 500 million for his life. Meanwhile, Sarah was celebrating their victory today and pulled Seon-woo out for grilled pork belly. As they ate and drank together, their relationship grew closer. On the way home, their hands accidentally brushed against each other, causing a shift in their emotions. Just then, Seon-woo noticed a few men in black blocking their path, and he could tell at a glance that they weren't good people. He urged Sarah to go home first. That immediately shattered the beautiful atmosphere between them. Just as Sarah was displeased with Seon-woo's sudden change in attitude, she turned around and saw a group of men dressed in black passing by. At this moment, she also realized the danger. She understood that although Seon-woo was skilled, defeating 4 men would be challenging, especially they were armed. Using her superhuman vision, Sarah saw that Seon-woo was severely injured and lying on the ground. The men were dragging him into a vehicle. Sarah chased all the way, and at the same time, she also informed Jin-mo of the location so that he could come to help quickly. Sarah climbed onto the barrel, quietly looking through the window to see Seon-woo being tied up by them. The leader was calling the person behind this. When Taejin heard that they had unfortunately seriously injured Seon-woo, he realized that they wanted more money. Taejin saw that things were getting serious and couldn't keep calm. His father saw that and grabbed the phone and told the gangsters to just teach Seon-woo a lesson and not drag them into it. The leader didn't understand what Taejin's father meant by handle it neatly and thought he wanted to kill Seon-woo. So the leader told his subordinates to put Seon-woo in the fish tank. Seon-woo saw that and hurriedly asked how much they were paid to take his life. The leader held out his 5-fingered hand. Seon-woo laughed angrily when he saw the number. A group chairman like him was only worth 500 million. The gang leader pondered, wondering if he had been deceived. Seon-woo urged him to let him go, promising to give him 5 billion. Just as the leader was instructing his men to take Seon-woo out of the fish tank, a loud explosion suddenly rang out. Jin-mo made a dramatic entrance with 2 girls by his side. Seeing this, the gang members immediately shoved Seon-woo back into the water and sealed the tank. Jin-mo transformed into a martial arts master, showcasing his skills with nunchaku, while the 2 girls armed with smoke bombs, bows, and water guns to joining the fight. In the chaos, the 3 of them completely forgot that rescuing Seon-woo should be their priority. Meanwhile, Seon-woo, being trapped in the fish tank, was struggling to breathe. Thankfully, Jin-mo noticed just in time, quickly opened the lid and pulled him out. Sarah rushed over to help Seon-woo escape, while Jin-mo and Na-hee worked to clear a path behind them. Initially, they planned to lure the gangsters away, but to their surprise, the thugs ignored them and continued pursuing Seon-woo. Already injured and struggling to hold his breath, Seon-woo was physically exhausted. Eventually, they were cornered. Seon-woo used all his strength left to defeat the first wave of attackers. He urged Sarah to escape without worrying about him, warning that they could both get caught if she stayed behind. He led the remaining enemies to the edge of a cliff, then he slipped and vanished without a trace. Just as the gang leader was about to send someone to search for him, that the sound of a siren blared, forcing them to flee. After a night of relentless searching by the 3 of Sarah's group and the police, there were still no results. The next day on television, news broke that the chairman of Unkang Corporation, Seon-woo, had gone missing. Sarah recalled the last time she met him, when he protected her from the gangsters. Feeling restless, she decided she couldn't just sit idly by anymore. Sarah returned to the forest where Seon-woo had vanished, using her superhuman vision to search for clues. Suddenly, she spotted a red handprint on a tree. As she was about to look around further, she saw the gangsters reappear. Just when she didn't know what to do, a hand covered her mouth. It was Seon-woo, and he was still alive. That night, while Seon-woo was clinging to the cliff, he spotted Secretary Kim. He surmised that the person behind the thugs was the vice chairman, which prompted him to temporarily change his plans and go into hiding. He wanted to learn what their next move would be. Seon-woo then took Sarah to the villa where his mother had lived before she passed away. Seeing him covered in wounds made Sarah's heart ache, so she took the initiative to help him bandage up. As the gauze wrapped around his waist, the atmosphere between them grew increasingly romantic. Suddenly, Sarah noticed a photograph on the table. Seon-woo explained that it was a picture of his mother when she was a volunteer at an orphanage. Sarah revealed that this was the same orphanage where she had lived as a child, and that Seon-woo's mother was the aunt she cherished dearly. Because Sarah has superhuman eyesight different from normal people, she was often bullied by other children. They said that she was a monster. Only the aunt always comforted, encouraged, and always loved her. From that point on, Sarah decided to be special person. If she wanted to act, she needed to buy some essentials. Sarah took Seon-woo out to eat a variety of delicious dishes he had never tried before, and she even bought him a cheap shirt he had never worn. They both wore simple floral shirts and sunglasses, creating a beautiful scene that even the old photographer couldn't help take many photos for them. Sarah discovered this and quickly ran over to stop him. Seon-woo unexpectedly discovered many old photographs on the wall and thought he might find something from them. After complimenting the old man on his photography skills, the man beamed and showed him more pictures. To Seon-woo's surprise, he made a significant discovery. The vice chairman had been there 20 years ago, and the necklace that had vanished with his mother was also in his possession. This meant he could very well be the one who had murdered his mother. To find evidence, they first needed to find the person left in the photograph. Meanwhile, Sarah was fast asleep that she suddenly felt uneasy. She encountered another nightmare, this time dreaming of a green-eyed monster chasing her. When Seon-woo saw the pained expression on her face, he rushed over to comfort her, placing her head on his lap and holding Sarah's hand. Just like that, Sarah finally fell into a peaceful sleep. The next morning, Sarah woke up to find Seon-woo still in the same position as the night before, wondering if his limbs were numb. The atmosphere between the two seemed to be quietly changing. At that moment, Seon-woo suddenly received a message from Jin-mo, revealing that the company had called for an emergency shareholders meeting. It turned out that both Taejun and his father believed Seon-woo was dead and had hastily summoned the meeting, wanting to take the lead position under the pretext that the company lacked leadership. Just as everyone raised their hands to vote, the vice chairman felt that the position rightfully belonged to him. But then the door slowly opened. Handsome Seon-woo in a white suit walked in with his secretary. Everyone was shocked to witness this scene, and the vice chairman's dream completely came to an end. Seon-woo certainly would not let the two of them who had conspired against him go unpunished. In the end, the vice chairman had no choice but to shift all the blame onto his son. Before leaving, Taejun shouted that Secretary Kim had framed him. The vice chairman reflected on the entire situation, questioning whether he had raised a traitor. Therefore, he secretly went to Secretary Kim's house. Indeed, that Secretary Kim not only had evidence of Taejun's drug dealings, but also proof that Taejun had embezzled public funds. When he saw the photos placed next to the bed, the vice chairman chairman as if had seen something terrible that he quickly turned around and left. Secretary Kim was a meticulous person, so that night he discovered a few strange strands of hair on the bedsheet. Through his investigation of the driver, he learned that the vice chairman had been there. He slowly opened the curtains, revealing numerous pictures of the vice chairman inside. The scene then shifted to Seon-woo and Sarah, who had grown closer. After everything that had happened, they finally mustered the courage to express their feelings for one another. The next day, Secretary Hong handed Seon-woo a piece of information. After investigating employment records from 20 years ago, Seon-woo discovered that the man seen with the vice chairman in the photo had once been his driver, and now that man was living in this village. While they had not yet located the driver, they encountered a teacher who was anxiously searching for a student. Sarah enthusiastically used her superpower and ultimately found the child hiding in a sand pit by the roadside. It turned out that this child's mother had passed away not long ago, and the little girl just wanted to find her mother in this way. Sarah gently comforted and hugged this poor child. After a day of searching, they finally found the vice chairman's driver from 20 years ago. Seon-woo took out the photo and asked the driver about the events from that time, but the driver told he had Alzheimer's and couldn't remember anything. After saying this, he shooed the two away. Unexpectedly at that moment, the little girl whom Sarah had helped ran over. It turned out she was the granddaughter the driver cherished above all else, even his life. When the driver realized that the two people in front of him were his benefactors, he revealed that he and the vice chairman had gone to the orphanage together because the vice chairman suddenly wanted to sponsor a child named Nam-gil and send him abroad. Seon-woo showed the driver a picture of his mother and the children from the orphanage for confirmation. The driver glanced at it and recognized Nam-gil, but why the vice chairman would suddenly sponsor a child he had never met? Jin-mo used his hacking skills to check all information related to Nam-gil, but there were no records of him returning to the country, as if he had vanished from the world. Seon-woo and Sarah decided to investigate, starting from the orphanage. Returning to the orphanage where she had lived for many years, Sarah felt an overwhelming sense of familiarity. However, the former director had passed away, so the new director was unaware of the past events. She advised Sarah to look for her close brother, was Police Kwang-gi. Sarah felt a glimmer of hope and immediately took a lunchbox to find her brother. She learned that Kwang-gi and Nam-gil had attended the same high school. The two then drove straight to the school, but found out that the principal from that time had retired. Fortunately, the new principal was aware of some information. When Seon-woo mentioned wanting to sponsor a teaching building, the principal was delighted. Therefore, when Seon-woo inquired about Nam-gil, principal revealed everything he knew. He said that Nam-gil had excellent grades back then, and that he had also taught Nam-gil's class. While other children were scared of frogs, Nam-gil could perform dissections without changing his expression. The principal thought he would attend medical school. 10 years ago, he had encountered Nam-gil again. He had changed significantly, even changing his name. When Seon-woo and Sarah heard that name, they were shocked. Meanwhile, Jin-mo had finished developing a facial predicting program, analyzing what Nam-gil would look like after 20 years. He was eager to call Seon-woo. Just then, the name was called in unison. The person was none other than Secretary Kim. Seon-woo finally realized that Secretary Kim held the key to his mother's case. He immediately set out to find Secretary Kim for clarification. Secretary Kim candidly admitted that he was Nam-gil, explaining to Seon-woo why he had changed his name. He mentioned that he was sent abroad for further studies with the vice chairman's support and had now become his valuable assistant. Secretary Kim stated that he did this out of gratitude, but he claimed not to know anything else. Of course, Seon-woo did not believe him. His instincts told him that Secretary Kim was hiding the truth. In reality, Secretary Kim had witnessed the process when vice chairman murdering Seon-woo's mother. To demonstrate his loyalty, he had even killed Seon-woo's dying mother himself. He initially believed that if he became useful, he would gain the father's recognition. But unexpectedly, the vice president kept Secretary Kim by his side, just to have someone do wrong things for him. Now, fearing that Seon-woo would continue his investigation, the vice chairman wanted Secretary Kim to voluntarily confess and take all the blame. Eventually, Secretary Kim realized the harsh truth that he was just a used person. He endured it like a non-existent person for 20 years. But in the end, the father only considered him a servant. He crushed the photo of the family of 3 with his feet. Secretary Kim found Seon-woo the next day. He knelt down in front of Seon-woo and said that he saw the vice chairman murder Seon-woo's mother with his own eyes. Although Seon-woo was mentally prepared, he still couldn't accept this truth. The uncle he once trusted and relied on so much was the one who murdered his biological mother. He had to make the vice chairman pay the same price. Even Sarah could not stop him this time. However, when Seon-woo frantically searched for the vice chairman, he discovered that the man had taken sleeping pills to end his life, leaving behind a suicide note confessing all his crimes. Seon-woo grabbed the vice chairman by the collar and shouted in anger. Fortunately, the vice chairman was saved after emergency treatment. But the more Seon-woo thought about it, the more he felt that something was off. Besides the sleeping pills, there was also a bottle of antihypertensive medication on the table. If someone wanted to die, why would they care about their health? So Seon-woo sought out Officer Kwang-gi. After investigating, they found that the vice chairman's blood sugar contained the antihypertensive medication. This indicated that the vice chairman did not leave this world by himself but was murdered. Sang-woo commissioned Kwang Gi to reinvestigate the truth behind his mother's case from 20 years ago, and he intentionally leaked information to Secretary Kim. From his attitude, Sang-woo sensed that there was indeed something wrong with Secretary Kim. Sang-woo then instructed Secretary Hong to secretly enter Secretary Kim's office to collect a hair sample for DNA testing. He also told Secretary Hong to deliberately leave clues behind. By this way, if Secretary Kim was the murderer, he would likely reveal his weaknesses. To lighten Sang-woo's mood, everyone decided to go camping. At this moment, Kwang Gi called, and Sang-woo thought there was a new development in the case, so he asked Jinmo to join him to answer the call. Suddenly, a man dressed in black appeared. He looked like a professional assassin. Fortunately, Sang-woo and Jinmo had also trained in some combat skills. Right after that, the three of them began to fight. Sarah, that using her superhuman vision, was able to see the scene. Just as she was about to rush down to help, she noticed Secretary Kim spying through telescope. In that moment, when their eyes met, Sarah realized that he indeed had one green eye. This triggered vague childhood memories. It turned out that Sarah had witnessed Secretary Kim murder Sang-woo's mother when she was young. Meanwhile, Sang-woo and Jinmo were struggling to fend off the assassin, but luckily Kwang Gi arrived just in time. Hearing the alarm, both the assassin and Secretary Kim quickly fled the scene. Once they calmed down, Sarah recounted everything she remembered to the group, expressing her regret for not having rushed to save Sang-woo's mother. Due to Sarah's emotional instability, she was taken back to the secret base, while the others hurried to Secretary Kim's house to apprehend him. However, when they arrived, they found that Secretary Kim's home was empty, with no trace of him there. It turns out that he had sneaked into the secret base, planning to kill Sarah. Then, there will be no more witnesses in the world. He tightened his grip on Sarah's neck until she suffocated. Sarah said that she had told everyone the truth. Whatever he did would be useless. Secretary Kim suddenly stopped. He decided to kidnap Sarah to threaten Sang-woo. If he could deal with two people at once, there would be nothing to worry about anymore. He called Sang-woo and told Sarah that he was in his hands. If he wanted to save Sarah, he should go to the meeting point alone without bringing anyone with him. Otherwise, Sarah would not be able to keep her life. For Sarah's safety, Sang-woo had no choice but to comply. However, upon arriving at the designated spot, Sang-woo found no sign of Sarah. He went into a rage and immediately charged at Secretary Kim. It seemed like victory was within reach, but suddenly Secretary Kim raised a remote control that glowed red. Sang-woo pulled back his fist in surprise. Secretary Kim then pulled out his mobile phone, displaying an image of a bomb attached to Sarah. He threatened Sang-woo not to act rashly, warning that if he did, the woman he loved would die right there. Sang-woo stood still, allowing Secretary Kim to strike him. After satisfying his aggression, Secretary Kim demanded that Sang-woo kneel and beg him once more. As he watched Sang-woo kneel before him, he couldn't hide his delight and broke into a smile. On the other side, Sarah was tied to a chair. She used her super sight to navigate toward the wall, but unfortunately she tripped and caused the bomb's cap to fall off. Meanwhile, Secretary Kim smugly recounted how he had murdered Sang-woo's mother. Unable to bear it any longer, Sang-woo lost control and charged at him. The reason Secretary Kim did all this was out of jealousy for the happiness Sang-woo had. Just as Sang-woo was about to throw another punch, Secretary Kim kicked him down and began choking him tightly. As Sang-woo struggled to breathe, Sarah grabbed a pan and struck Secretary Kim on the head. It turned out she had managed to cut the ropes by rubbing them against the wall. Then, using a mirror and the ability to see through things, Sarah safely disarmed the bomb just in time and rushed to save Sang-woo. Secretary Kim was finally captured. Sang-woo and Sarah embraced tightly. After 20 years, he had finally caught the real culprit behind his mother's death. Now Sang-woo's life appeared a woman worthy of his love and care. He gave Sarah a necklace. This necklace is his most precious thing because it was given to him by his mother. Sarah was very touched by this action. Sang-woo took Sarah to his parents' grave, told them that this was his future wife, confidently said that the two of them would definitely be happy forever. After 20 years, Sang-woo had his first vacation, and then he and Sarah lived happily ever after. The movie ends here. Goodbye, and see you again in the next videos. Bye-bye.